Hey Cloud Gamers, today we're having a look at Cyberpunk 2077 at 4K across the Xbox Series X, Google Stadia in visuals mode, and the Shield TV Pro upscaling the GeForce NOW 1080 up to 4K using the AI upscaling. Starting off with the blind test, then we'll have a look at the images without telling you which is which, and then we'll bring up the labels and go into a bit more detail before showing them full screen. As we saw across the landscape there and the buildings, it's looking pretty close across the board, but as we come to the character model, the middle two definitely seem to have a very similar coloration, whereas the one on the right looks a bit more pale and seems to have a little bit more jaggedness around the beard. Overall, all three looking absolutely incredible here at 4K.
What? Who the fuck are you to say that to me? Our soccer counter intel. We done here?
As we move around, we can see as we start the stealth bit here that the Xbox Series X is actually on the left, the Google Stadia version on the Chromecast Ultra is in the middle, and the Shield TV Pro with the 4K upscaling of GeForce NOW is on the right. The Xbox Series X here is in the performance mode. Although we did try the quality mode, we did not see any actual difference apart from the frame rate being capped at 30. Google Stadia, as said before, is running the visuals mode, and the Shield TV Pro is running GeForce NOW with the version on high with ray tracing and DLSS on performance mode. As we freeze here, we see something quite strange looking out at the window, that both the Xbox Series X and Google Stadia have a bit of blurriness, whereas the Shield TV Pro, even though it's the 1080 upscaled, looks clearer, but we can see a bit of pixelation with that sharpening effect on some of the buildings. We see similar then as we come out into the city. The difference between the light and the dark areas is much more prominent on the Shield TV Pro with the upscaling. Again, things look a little bit sharper, although they've got a bit more jagged edges. Both the Series X and Stadia look a little bit more blurry here. But when we go full screen then, we're looking at the Series X here, things look a bit clearer, and it does seem that it takes a little bit of time when going out into the world for that blurriness to kind of fade out and get a bit more quality. It is worth noting that the blurriness is much more obvious when looking on a monitor. When looking on TVs or phone screens, it really looks quite clear, so monitors really do show up these differences quite a lot. As we're driving around here though, we can see the detail on the buildings and a little bit of pop-in on the window effects there. But generally looking extremely good. The car does look a little bit fuzzy here, but overall it's looking pretty good. As we move over to the Google Chromecast Ultra footage then, again in the visuals mode, so we're capped at 30 frames per second here, whereas the Series X is trying to push 60 but doesn't always quite hit it at the moment. Stadia is looking slightly more fuzzy than the Series X here, but not too much different. Colours look slightly more vibrant on the Chromecast, but again on the TV it doesn't look as blurry. And the lighting effects on the car actually look slightly better here than on the Series X. But we are capped at that 30 frames per second, but at least it's a constant 30 frames per second and not bouncing up and down. As we drive down here to see the same section, we don't see those pop-in effects as much. As we move over to the Shield TV Pro, the coloration does seem to be slightly off, does seem to be slightly paler than the other versions, but that may be just because we've seen them side by side, but for some reason it just doesn't look as vibrant as the others. It may be the upscaling effects, but otherwise the quality and the sharpness does look extremely good. And getting that benefit of the DLSS and ray tracing does really help. Although we do see the sharpening effects kind of popping in occasionally as the environment loads. And on the high settings here, it doesn't quite hit at 60 frames per second all of the time. When you're static, it does manage it quite easily, but when you're moving around, you do see those dips down into the 40-50 range. As we come back side by side then, as we're going through the alleyways, going towards the Ripper Dock, we can see those differences slightly more. For some reason the Series X and Google Stadia do look slightly blurry in comparison to the Shield TV Pro, and it may be because of that sharpening effect that it just gives a different feel. But on TVs it does look quite different to as it does on PC screens, and this may attribute to some of the blurry type effects. As we come through here and looking at the receptionist before we go through and back to the alleyway, again the character models when we are close up look extremely good across the board. No matter where you've picked this game up, I hope you're enjoying it. It is an absolutely phenomenal game. Let me know in the comments below where you're going to be playing and in what mode. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all the latest across all cloud gaming platforms, and we will see you next time.
Vicky. Surprise everyone.